let's bring in Professor Aristyo Darmawan from the Faculty of Law, Universitas Indonesia, and a PhD scholar at the School of Regulation and Global Governance at the Australian National University. Thanks for joining us this evening.
Thanks for having me.
Let's start the Global Affairs Insider. Now, President Widodo is about to end his presidency this year. So, as a local, as an Indonesian, what do you think are the top contributions or legacy of President Joko Widodo?
Well, thanks. I think these are very important questions. I think President Joko Widodo himself has left a lot of important legacies for Indonesia. I mean, he was very much a popular president. He was one of the first president, I think, which is elected from the non-elites background. So he was very much a commoner, a businessman outside the Jakarta elites before. So his elections was a major leap in Indonesian politics. And of course, if we talk about the 10 years of his administration, he's done a lot of legacies. One of the most important the one that we just discussed before, is the new capital cities. Indonesian capital cities from Jakarta to Nusantara itself. I think it's one of the most major legacy. I think other legacies which is very much popular about him is about the infrastructure project that he built throughout his administrations. I mean, I think people's really respect the legacies in terms of the infrastructures, the road buildings, and so on and so forth. And I think how he deals with the economies, I think survived with the economic crisis and the COVID crisis. I think how his response, his policy was I think was quite a bit of success as well. So I think he marks a lot of legacies for Indonesia within 10 years of administration. But also, of course, also there's a lot of important aspect which has been hugely criticized during his administrations, including the declining of Indonesian democracies and the rise of nepotisms in Indonesian politics. I think there's a lot of research from researcher abroad how Indonesian democracy has been declined. The prosecutions of activists, I think, has also been an issue. And the latestly what happened in the past years during these elections is the rise of nepotisms. How he push his son to become the vice president of the newly president elected Prabowo. I think has been also an issue in terms of like the independence of the court, the constitutional court, who then created or legalized the candidacies of his son, which is before he was underage. He was before not fit yet the minimum age of 40. So it has been an issue as well. So the notes or the critics with the administration is mostly in regards to the democracies and human rights for that.
Yeah, I'm curious to know that despite Joko Widodo's popularity, it led him to issues and contentions to human rights and democracy. I mean, how did it happen, and what do you think led to those issues concerned? Because for a very popular president, to my personal understanding, he should be able to mobilize his people to really work and maintain the strength of democracy or of your own government. At the same time, I'm sure that if a popular president runs the country, issues on human rights may not be as much as what is happening right now in the Indonesian nation. So why do you think these issues came towards the end of his term as president of Indonesia?
Yeah, I think that is very important questions though, and a very interesting one, I should say. I thought that he's some sort of like, as you said, he got a very huge number of supporters Even the level of satisfactories of him as a president somewhat reported about 70%, and that is a very, very high for a president, right? So I think with that number of popularities and number of support from the people, I thought that he thought that whatever that he did was going to be supported by the people, right? So I think he tried to use that popularities and number of acceptance in terms of like different occasions, with those huge number of popularities based on, for example, like people satisfactory of the economy. He tried to then push numbers of his families in the local elections. I mean, like he pushed his son-in-law running for mayors in Medan, and his son as a mayors in Solo. So he tried to push, and it was because of his popularity, it was successful. I mean, like his son was successful as a mayor of Solo, and now he tried to push it again as the vice president, and he won the elections, right? So I think he misused the popularities and the acceptance in order to get the political goals that he wanted, right? So that has become a major issue, and I think he also, for example, like in some case, prosecute like the activists and democracy and everything, because I think the quite tricky is that the people who care about democracy, people who care about freedom of speech, is the people who intellectuals in the universities, professors or other intellectuals, but the common people, they don't really care about those kind of like rights or freedoms. Like what they care more about is the economy. As long as the economy is going very well, they don't really care much about the nepotisms. They don't care how Joko is or the oligarch building like the nepotisms and so on and so forth, right? So this thing was what has been observed in the past years. There has been a lot of pushback against his son candidacies as a vice president. There has been a lot of professors in the universities releasing a statement against or like criticizing the democracies under his administration, but it's basically his turnouts is just intellectuals who care about that, right? So his son still get even a huge number of support in the elections. I mean, like he won about 58%. I think this is a remarkable result for three candidates in the elections, right? So I think what I thought is that he might misuse the trust of the peoples, and he misused the democracies itself.
Yeah. I'm curious to know that, earlier you said that almost all his family members ran for public office and then eventually they won. I mean, there's nothing wrong for as long as they were voted and won by majority of vote. But how did it weaken the presidency of Joko Widodo in reference to the intellectuals who were trying to contest his power when it comes to the central government of Indonesia, and how nepotism can be a negative or a positive attribute to a sitting president when he has everything, when he is so popular that almost everything that he do will be acceptable by the commoners.
I think a fair point when you say that the family members was democratically elected, right? But I think that the issues was what happened a few months ago in regards to the candidacies of his son as a vice president, right? So his son was actually still not yet 40 years old. He's 36 or 37 or something. And the law was actually required for a vice president at minimum 40 years old. So what they did was to challenge the law before the Constitutional Court in order for his sons to be able to running as a vice president, right? And the chief judge of the Constitutional Court was actually Jokowi's brother-in-law. So there's like a conflict of interest in order to challenge the law. And of course, as a brother-in-law of President Joko Widodo, he then make a decision. The Constitutional Court then make a decision that a person who before 40 years old might be running as the vice president as long as they served before as a head of the regions, as a mayor or a governor or something, right? So people saw that it wasn't an independent judiciary, right? Because of there's more complicated in it. There's like several judges who have like dissenting opinions, arguing there's a lot of ethics violations and so on and so forth. So what people think about this, what professors at universities, intellectuals think that there has been a lot of misuse of these institutions in order to push, or in order to let his Jokowi's sons running as vice president. So there has been a lot of issues in the past few months in regards to this, and there has been a lot of pushback as well. But of course, as I said earlier, people, or the majority, you would think that as long as the economy is going very well, they don't really care much about nepotisms or democracy in decline. They still elect Jokowi's son and get a very high number turns out in the polls for the last elections.
On a final note, how would you describe the legacy of President Widodo in a nutshell? And then how would you want to remember him as your president?
Right. I think I should say that I very much agree with the book written by Ben Bland a number of years ago, A Man of Contradictions. I think Joko himself, there's a lot of contradictions. I mean, he was the first president who was not from the Jakarta elites, but then he built an oligarch himself. He's built a nepotism himself and become a mastermind of the Indonesian politics, right? So he's starting from nobody, I should say, and then he become the mastermind of the Indonesian politics. So that is a very huge contradiction on one hand. And the second one, I think another contradiction is that he himself, as a nobody elected to become a president, it shows the healthiness of democracies, right? But then, after he's become elected, he tried to betray democracies and trying to create all this politics himself and push all his family's members as a key public official. So I think there's a lot of contradiction as well. I think, and so he's gonna be remembered as a very good president in terms of like legacies of moving the capital city to Nusantara and creating a lot of infrastructure projects on one hand, but on the other hand, in terms of like democracies and freedom of speech and everything, and there has been a lot of criticism as well. So one thing, as you said, it might be a lot of contradictions in himself and what he built in Indonesia, politics and democracies, as well as infrastructures and economy. So a lot of different legacies, I should say.
Professor Aristyo Darmawan from the Faculty of Law, Universitas Indonesia, and a current PhD scholar at the School of Regulation and Global Governance at the Australian National University. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
This is Dr. Reyron del Rosario. That's the Global Affairs Insider. Follow us to our next episode only here in IPDCI News Channel.